MTN Nigeria gained 10% after listing on the premium board of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Meanwhile, the all-share index gained 0.5%, ending the 8-day losing streak, while market capitalization rose to 12.5 trillion naira. Sam Chidoka, the managing director and CEO of Kairos Capital, joins me to discuss the long-term gains of MTN's listing in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Sam.
Thanks, Ken.
I'd like you first to speak on your thoughts on this listing and what it means for the capital markets.
Well, I think it's very good for the market. I think it's you see what has happened already to the all-share index and what has happened to market capitalization, up 12.5 trillion because of the addition of MTN. It's something we've always clamored for in the market, that the blue chip companies that are not listed should seek to be listed. MTN has done this. You could argue that it was regulation driven in terms of it was part of the conversations around the fine they had about 2-3 years ago. And well, for whatever reason, they've listed. It's an opportunity to deepen the market, provide more liquidity and different asset classes in terms of different industries. So for the mobile sector, they're the first major to list, and hopefully to lead to other people in that space to also come and list in the market. But all through and through, we think it's a positive development for the market, and it's good for the company also.
All right. Before now, we've seen the market's been down for 8 straight days, even after other things, earnings have been out, and we didn't see that move the market so much. Do you think this is the right catalyst for the market right now? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you're dealing with a market that year to date has lost. We're running towards 10% now, about over 9% negative of the market. In the last 8 days, it's been negative all through. But for the fact that MTN was listed, and if you look at what we saw from the listing yesterday, there was still pent-up demand. The demand was not met even yesterday in terms of people wanted to buy more of the shares of MTN. So that sort of helped to spur the market. So, I mean, it was a break that the market, much needed break for the market with MTN coming to list yesterday. Hopefully, it would increase confidence in the market. So it's become one of the bellwether stocks. Second largest capitalized company on the exchange after Dangote Cement. So whatever happens to any day you see a serious uptick in Dangote Cement and MTN, you probably expect them to drag the market up.
All right, but when you listen to the comments made by the MTN CEO there, he's talking about the fact that the Nigerian market is still underpenetrated. But the market is still not without its challenges. But when you weigh in, the opportunity versus the challenges, do you think that juice is what the squeeze?
Yeah, it is actually, because you see, part of the challenge of our market is the challenge of data. It's assumed that we are about 200 million people, but that's a huge assumption. Today, we have about 120 million registered telephone users. But of course, there's multiplicity. Some of us have 3 phones and 4 phones and all of that, mobile lines and all of that with SIM cards. So you can't count it and say, but really, there's lack of data to really justify if there is still a huge uptick in number of people that you need to sell service to. But I think what they need to also focus on is in terms of average revenue per user. So in as much as they continue to squeeze and increase their ARPU, in as much as they continue to, from their numbers that we saw, you can see that they're doing well in terms of data. So in as much as they continue to play hard in that data space and people continue to use, data is becoming perhaps the new gold. They continue to make money from there, then there is more juice to be squeezed out in terms of the Nigerian market. Also, they are the clear market leader. They have about 60,000, according to them, just slightly over 60,000. But when I checked NCC, it says there are about 65 million users on MTN. So, I mean, the next is Glo with about 46 million users. So they're the clear market leader. There is so much, they're growing in numbers of people who are buying SIMs, is growing in number of people who are applying for and buying their data service. So there's upside for them in the market.
All right, let's move on to other conversations around the market now. We just got the confirmation of the central bank governor by the Senate in there. I'd like you to speak to that and what it means for coming ahead of next week's MPC meeting.
Well, I think what it speaks to is it speaks to continuity. It speaks to now the market having distortions in terms of leaving a gap in the market is not good for the market at all. Speculations will probably drive the market in the wrong direction if this appointment has not been made. Some school of thought believe that perhaps maybe it should have been an opportunity to have a different person with a different perspective. But however, my view is that reappointing the CBN governor at this time just speaks to stability. We know what his views have been in the last 5 years. He's spoken yesterday, and we see that largely he's not moving away from those views. So it gives you an opportunity to know how to operate within the economy, knowing where, at least on the monetary side, where macro issues are going. And so I think it's a step in the right direction to have appointed him quickly, reappointed him quickly, not left a lacuna in the space, because market just doesn't like uncertainties.
All right, then I'd like to speak to the recent inflation figures that came out, and then taking a quote from the CBN's last MPC meeting, where he talked about the fact that, MPC in the Monetary Policy Committee meeting needs to start signaling a new direction, given the fact that we've seen relative stability over time. We saw the last move they did, dropping it by 50 basis points. That's the MPR. Looking at this, I would like you to give me your guidance for the monetary policy going forward for Nigeria.
Well, starting with inflation. So inflation ticked up again for last month. But of course, it was mainly driven by food inflation. And you could maybe crystallize around, there was Easter celebrations, also just entering the Muslim fast. And usually at this time of the year, there's uptick in food inflation. So it might be an outlier, or it just might be another run of inflation ticking up. If that happens, seeing that CBN has always targeted inflation using MPR, I do not see them continuing to go in the direction of reducing MPR. What we see is they're probably maintaining where they are now or take it back up to where it used to be. Because the drive of the CBN and MPC has always been to fight inflation using the key monetary rate. And so I do not see a situation where there's going to be a great divergence from that, especially since we had an uptick in inflation for last month.
All right, now let's move on to other matters that are still around the Central Bank of Nigeria. Now, yesterday, we saw the CBN governor inaugurating a committee that will help revive the industry in there. When you look at Emefiele's coming back, do you think this is him hitting the ground running since he got his confirmation?
I think it's him continuing in the direction that he's been going. So the textile industry has been something close to his mind, and he's spoken about it before. Even whilst in his former tenure, he's always talked about the textile industry and the need to revive the textile industry. But my view is that the challenges the textile industry faces much more than just CBN starting a committee and maybe providing funding. I do not think the textile problem is just the money problem. There's a capital problem, agreed. So for you to do a textile industry, you need to be able to have capital formation that sustains for a long time. You can't take short-term money to try and fund the textile industry. So CBN providing a buffer is good. However, there are issues around border security. That people can smuggle in textile that's cheaper than what is produced in Nigeria, you're going to lose money. There are issues around factors of production. That you don't have power to run the textile industry and it's still cheaper to get the textile from China. You have a challenge. So I think that beyond what CBN probably is leading the charge, but I think the government needs to come together and find a holistic approach to it. So you have porous borders. You need to deal with the border issues. It doesn't just solve the textile issues, it helps to also solve the security challenges we face as a country. So I think there has to be a holistic move to help the textile industries come back and not just the committee alone doing that.
But I'd like you to speak to the importance of this coming on board, especially at the time where we are putting together the AFCFTA coming on board. Other countries are going to be doing that. There's going to be a lot of inter-Africa trade happening in there. Don't you think this is him more or less trying to position Nigeria's textile industry?
Yeah, I agree. You're trying to position Nigerian textile industry for inter-African trade and all of that. But the challenge is that when it comes to textile, that's not what our issue is. The issue is not just inter-Africa. You have the issue of what's coming out of Asia, what's coming out of China, what's coming imported textile is a major, major challenge. If the local fabric, the Ankara fabric, is cheaper to manufacture abroad, why do you want to do it here? Always and always, people have to look at, for businessmen, it's most times about the bottom line. Business is not charity. So if you're in business to make money. If you find that it's cheaper to import textile than to manufacture here, what will you do? You would import. So there are bigger issues. And I think that, yes, it's good to position Nigeria. Yes, it's good to set up the committee. I'm not saying the committee is a bad thing, but I'm saying that more needs to be done to make it work.
All right, then let's leave it there.